Hey, what up, uMu? Thank you for joining us for our Congressional Fellows panel. As usual, joining me from the admin team, we got Jay Will. Say what up, Jay Will.
Yo, what up? What up?
We also got our hype man from the back. We got Key. Say what up, Key.
What's up? What's up?
All right, all right. Before we get started into our panel this evening, we want to take a quick second to kind of go over our disclaimer. So all of the views and opinions expressed here this evening are our own personal views and opinions and do not represent the Air Force or any DoD organization. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jay Will, where he's going to talk a little bit more about our panel this evening. Jay Will, it's on you.
Yeah, man. So we got a special one for y'all today. We done had a lot of questions going about it, and we try to fill them as best as we can. But we figure why not get it from the horse's mouth. But before we get into that discussion, please don't forget. Hey, we want to represent y'all. Please enable StreamYard. Please enable StreamYard and Facebook streaming. We're not trying to take your information or identification. Just as you post your comments, we want to know who it's coming from. Our panelists are more than willing to reach back out to you all. And if it comes up and it says Facebook user, it's very hard for them to find that person. But like our admin team holding it down from the background, as you can see, it says Tony. And if she had a question, they'd be able to reach out. But with that, I'm going to transition over to Key.
All right. So just like Jay Will said, you all asked and, we responded. So the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, she had posted a photo with the Enlisted Fellowship Program participants. And we'll get the correct wording of how they're supposed to be announced. But it sparked conversation. And we know that there are certain packages that are coming up due. So we wanted to bring the horse or bring the individuals to you. I don't want to say horse, but bring the individuals to you all so we can have that conversation. So without further ado, we will do that. Please enable StreamYard. We are live streaming from Facebook and YouTube. So we have individuals that are not a part of the page. Please go out to our YouTube page and make sure that you are subscribed. And that's where we're at as well at the same time. So without further ado, up first, we're going to introduce Chief Master Sergeant Chesney.
Hey, what's going on, uMu? First and foremost, right? So long-time listener, first-time caller. I just want to give a shout out to the admin, right? Because I've been following uMu for a while, right? And I'm on a lot of forums on Facebook, and I got to say that the content that you guys provide and the way you moderate it is fantastic, right? So everything is professional, everything's on up and up. And you really created this environment which allowed people to kind of speak freely and openly about things that they're really going through. So thank you guys for that. So as Keith says, Jamal Chesney, I am in the AY 20 class of the Legislative Fellowship, right? So I hit my 20 years next month. So retirement is just on the horizon, at least I think. I'm intel by trade. I've been to places like Virginia. I was down at Langley first. Then I went over to Hawaii. I was at a Joint Command, and then I went down to Texas and I taught at my tech school. After that, I took a ride to Korea, and then from Korea, I went to Herbert Field and I worked at AFSOC for a little while, that AFSOC mission. Then I went back to Texas because I liked it so much, so I decided to teach again. And then I went back to Korea, right? So I just like doing things over and over again. But now from Korea, I got picked up in the AY 20 class. So I'm here to answer any questions you guys might have, and then I'll pass it over to my my counterparts.
All right, thank you so much for that. We have Rob.
Hey, what's going on, crew? Hey, happy to be here. Just want to echo the words from Chief Jamal Chesney. Definitely appreciate the content you guys are putting out, professional and keeping it down in real, so people get to able to have that conversation. A little bit about me. So I'm a 1 and 2 by trade, Intel professional. I have a background in space and cyber operations, but I started my career in Korea, where I had the privilege of turning 21. So that's definitely a good story for a later time. From there, I went to Alaska, Elmendorf, and then I went over to Peterson at Colorado Springs, and then over to Wright Pat, and then now I'm here. But yeah, enjoying the time here, and look forward to talking with you guys.
Cool.
Thank you so much for that, sir. And then last but not least, we have CMS Sergeant Griffin. Take it away, sir.
Is he muted?
You're muted, sir. Or he's not muted. We can't hear you.
Check.
How's that?
There you go.
There we go.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Well, I got to echo the other two because that's some great footsteps to follow. But really was when I heard that you guys were asking us to come in and kind of give you a little bit of a laydown about the defense fellows, jumped at the chance. This is excellent opportunity. Looking forward to tonight. Thank you for inviting us. And this is going to be a cool session. So, yep. So Senior Master Sergeant Joshua Griffin. I have been a 19-year Air Force career in satellite systems operations. The now defunct Air Force Space Command, may it rest in peace. And I have 1 year Space Force. So I'm also the first Space Force enlisted fellow on the Hill. So if anything's wrong, it's probably my fault. If anything goes right, leave it to the next guy to figure it all out. So my bases, Colorado, 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 California, Colorado. And now the Hill. So it has been a very singular type ride. Luckily, we can do satellite operations from almost anywhere. So I don't get the cool Korea stories, but I can give you a few desert stories. So just we can talk about that another time too. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, sir. Definitely, before we begin, I just wanted to make sure that we tapped in to say, we see often that on the officer side, there's a lot of developmental programs or there's different opportunities for them to be able to step out and to do something very cool and very unique as this program right here. So to just see that maybe, I think it was like 10 years after the Air Force was authorized to actually do this program, we see that the enlisted were able to come on. And so once we posted the picture onto our page, it definitely got the buzz from our airmen, the junior airmen. They were wanting to tap in. So just wanted to put that out there and remind them that, yes, there are programs that's out there for us to do as enlisted. And this is definitely going to thank you all again so much. Black, over to you.
So in order to kind of start guiding the conversation, right, as far as what the program entails, I want to kind of turn it over to Chief Chesney to kind of tell us a little bit about what the program is, what it entails, what are your roles in it, and secondly, what is your unique role as the program manager moving forward?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, right? So so like he said, I want to piggyback on that, and I hate using the term piggyback, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Double tap.
So yeah, so there are not a lot of programs like this one for the enlisted personnel, right? And I think that's why it's so important that we get the information about this program out there. I mean, you might have like education with industry or the AFIT program, but if you want to do a comparison between the programs that officers have and the programs that enlisted members have, I mean, we're going to lose that all day, right? So it was good back in 2012 is when they actually started enlisting fellows or allowing enlisted personnel to become fellows. And we started off small, right? So that very first year, we only selected one. That next year, we selected one. And then we gradually increased. So next it was 2 and then up to 3. And then now we're up to 4 Air Force personnel and then 1 Space Force personnel. Now, the Space Force might decide to do something differently, but, their force is small, so they can only spare so many people. But in describing the program, it's best that we look at it as an academic program because at its core, that's what it is. It's run by Air University. And on the officer side, they get PME credit for this, right? So we have academic assignments that are due. So when I'm talking about this, it's best to kind of describe it as such. So in general, the Legislative Fellowship is a chance to bring personnel into a program that introduces them to the legislative branch of government, and then how that legislative branch interacts with the executive branch to accomplish those strategic goals, right? So that's what it is in a nutshell. So it's split up into 3 different phases. And at any one time, you'll have 3 different academic classes running at once. In that first phase, it's about 6 months long, and that's your spin-up time. We call it the professional development time. And during this time, you're going to be attached to either some civilian agency. Like I was at the Department of State. We had guys at think tanks like RAND. We had people at Department of Veteran Affairs, Homeland Security, or you might just be in SAF-LL, which is the program, the Secretary of the Air Force Legislative Liaison Directorate at the Pentagon. You might be in a division in there. In addition to that, in that 6 months, they enroll you into a government affairs or government studies program at Georgetown, kind of like a Congress 101. So they just don't send you to Capitol Hill with no knowledge of what's really going on and say, hey, figure it out. So you do that 6 months of that civilian spin up time, and then in your Georgetown affairs or your government affairs class. After that 6 months, which runs from about July to December, then you spend a full calendar year on the Capitol attached to either a member of the House of Representatives or a senator for that whatever Congress you're associated with. After that year, then you'll spend the next 18 months back at the Pentagon. And for the enlisted personnel, we it's a shot in the dark on where we send you. Right now, we're sending people to the Joint Staff Legislative Affairs Team or the Office of Secretary of Defense Legislative Affairs Team or back to SAF-LL, right? Whichever where we can kind of fit you in. But so those are the 3 specific phases to the program, the academic program. So like I said, anytime you have 3 classes on the Hill, you have the class that just came off the Hill, you have the class that's on the Hill, and then you have the class that's doing their spin up time. So program manager, right? So I just want to clear up a couple things about that, right? So currently, Chief Lucy Stockett is the senior enlisted advisor for the program, and she's on a TDY right now out with SimSAF in Arkansas, right? And I'm not name dropping, but that's part of the stuff that you'll do as the senior enlisted advisor. And what that job entails is that you'll staff the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force and the Chief Master Sergeant of the Space Force at any congressional function that they may attend, or anytime they have to testify before Congress. You'll kind of get them ready, and then you'll travel with them if need be. In addition to that, you'll coordinate all the hiring actions for the program. So every class that comes in, you'll kind of collect the packages, review them, and then you'll make your recommendations to the director, which is a 2-star, as well as the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, who's the final say on who gets picked up. And then you'll also advise our director on the health, welfare, and the overall management of the enlisted fellows in the program.
Oh, that's what's up. Yeah.
We'll go to the next question. I had a follow-up to the response, Chief, as far as the academic portion. So that's something that's brand new to me. I wasn't tracking that portion at all. So can you go over a little bit about the academic requirements, if there are any, to become a fellow?
So the academic so there are prerequisites in order for you to become a fellow, right? So in the application process, you need to have a bachelor's degree. And that's not waivable. You're gonna have to have a bachelor's when you come in. While you're in the program, there are certain things that you'll have to do that AU requires, right? So you have to write a paper on which are, let me not get ahead of myself, right? So you have a professional development plan, just like you would do in senior NCOA. You have one of those. The only other requirement is to finish the Georgetown indoctrination, that Congress 101 that we talked about, right? So there's no really written requirement to do for that. However, what Georgetown offers you is the opportunity to enter into their legislative studies certificate program. And what that entails is that it's 2 research seminars. So after you finish their Congress 101, you have the opportunity to take 2 additional research seminars. Each one of those programs or seminars are 4 months long. And within those 4 months, at the end of it, there's a paper requirement. What AU requires is that you write some form of paper to turn in regards to what you've been doing. So you can use that paper for one of those research seminars to meet your AU requirement. If you finish those 2 research seminars, then you'll graduate the Georgetown certificate program, and then you'll end up with a master's certificate in legislative studies from Georgetown.
Oh, thank you for that, Chief.
Oh, no, that was a lot to digest, but good thing we record these to go back and follow. Now,
right.
Hey, real quick, I got a plug if you guys don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Chief mentioned about the active duty side in the Space Force a little bit. I just want to also make a plug for the reserve component. They don't follow the same active application process, but we do have a reserve representative, a part of the enlisted cohort, Ava Apia, and she'd be available to talk to anybody about that process. They go through the Enlisted Development Education Board, and they're selected every 2 years, I believe.
No doubt. So I did want to ping y'all on the follow-ups as for Joshua and Rob is so I kind of want to know, like, what made you want to become a fellow, and then if there was something in there that because I want to keep deep diving a little bit into the application process and what that entails. So because like some of you all coming from an Intel background, so that automatically triggers to me, do you need a TS before you even apply for it, or is that something that you don't require but it's waivable or desired, just things like that. So twofold, if either one of you all can start what made you want to become it? And then can you fill in some of those holes as far as in the application process if people are interested in becoming? Is there a rank requirement? Is there, all the little details?
Yeah, I could start. So for me, I found out about the program back in 2013. And from there, it was at the time, I believe, is Chief Master Sergeant LeVar Kirkpatrick who was selected for it. And from that point on, I kind of followed the program throughout my progression up until I became eligible once I got a line number for senior. And that's what led me to apply. But more so than that, going back to what we talked about earlier, is just there's not a lot of opportunities for enlisted to step outside their comfort zone to do something more officer oriented. We do a lot of stuff that is focused solely on like human capital and leading the enlisted force and just, the backbone of the Air Force. But we don't necessarily do enough to train our senior NCOs or even our NCOs on that strategic context about how can we develop along similar lines to our officer counterparts. So when it comes time to advise them and work, hand in hand with them, that we're at the same level of understanding on that strategic picture and how warfighting is done and planned for. So that's always been kind of like my desire to join the program, especially from like an intel background. But, just from the other enlisted fellows that aren't here, it's not just enlisted on the Hill that are part of this. We have a respiratory technician that's part of my class. We also have a paralegal, and then we have other intel, and then we have logistics members as well that have made it. So it's a wide array of people that can actually join the program and be selected for it.
Joshua, you got some add-ins on there? I'm sorry, I was muted that time. Like I didn't know what I was doing.
I didn't hear your question. I just want to make sure I'm on the right page.
So my question, could you and I appreciated Rob for that, because he's probably been following the program for a long time and kind of understood what was going to be the expectation going into it, even as it goes with application. But can you dive in? I want you to say, hey, what made you become a fellow? But then could you also dive into like the application process and how did it work for you?
All right. So what made me become a fellow? So it's kind of a twofold type thing. One of the first things was that I love to be challenged. I try to find ways to be outside of the box. I'm not your typical 9-to-5 type worker, and I'm always trying to find new ways to do new things, right? One of the things that one of my old mentors told me was that if you're the smartest guy in the room, find a different room. So that's what you keep doing. Just keep moving. So the second thing was the one thing I've always wanted to do is be a force of effective change. And that kind of worked from a supervisory level. And then when I was Inspector General, I was making changes across the Space Command. Once again, may it rest in peace. And then further on, I became an additional duty first sergeant. It's those little changes. And now we're making changes at a national level. And it's positive changes, hopefully. And I hope people that see that. So those were the two main driving factors for why I became a fellow, was to make effective change and just to continue to be challenged in my career. You were asking another question about
the application process. So as you went through the application process, like how was that? And then honestly, to all of you all, if you all have something to add on to that as well, is when you went through that application process, how was that experience for you? What kind of things do you wish you would have known ahead? Is there anything that could have set you up better for applying? Obviously, whatever you did was right because you got selected, but if there was some nuggets out there that you can press to anybody that's watching or will watch this.
So on the application requirements, I mean, it's a pretty lengthy list of requirements. So yes, so you already heard you kind of have to have a bachelor's degree. I saw the question about any bachelor degree, right? I mean, this is not like when you're trying to go for OTS and they're like, we only want rated type degrees. No, if you put your name in the hat. If you think you've got the qualities, which I'm sure we're going to go over to be a fellow, to help make that be a force of effective change, then go for it. So the requirements was you had to have like a letter of recommendation. You had to send in your EPRs. You had to send in your fitness reports. I mean, it was all kind of the basic if you're going in front of a board type stuff. But let me give you a little bit of hint and advice. When you're going through and writing that application, when you're writing that your recommendation letter, put in there some of the things that you've been challenged with and how you overcame those challenges. They don't always want the shiny pennies, the stars of the show. They want to see people that have grown, that have been willing to take on those strong challenges and then turn them around and turn them into successes. That's the thing. And be concise. We're not looking for 5-page, 10-page expository essays. We're looking for like just a single page. If you can't say it in one page, you need to go back and reevaluate. So that would be the couple things I would say for sure.
So I would add on to that, right? So you were asking about the top secret clearance, right? So in regards to the prerequisites that you'll need, right? So you don't need to have a clearance, but you need to have the ability to get a TS clearance when you're applying. The other things that you'll need your CERF. You're going to need your last 3 PRs. You're going to need the bachelor's degree. You're going to need a letter of recommendation from your senior rater. And then you're also going to need a personal statement. And I think that's what Josh was talking about when he says, what is your, telling about some of the challenges that you've overcome. I'm going to be totally honest with you, with everybody on here, right? So I applied the year before I got picked up, and I didn't because the competition is ridiculous, right? And we can only select, at the time, they were only selecting 3 people, and then the next year they selected 4. When I didn't get picked up, right, so I was, obviously you don't get something that you want, you kind of down and out. So I talked to the board members. I talked to the senior enlisted advisor at the time as well, and they gave me some real candid feedback in regards to what I needed to do to kind of make my package better. So I've been fielding a whole bunch of phone calls and emails and text messages about, hey, look, I want to apply. What are some things that I need to do? Or what are some things that you guys are looking for in regards to a good applicant? And I'm going to really give everybody on here the same advice that I've been giving most people. And it was the same advice that was given to me that made the most difference in my next package, right? Was when you're writing that letter, your personal statement, you have to find your voice. Because what I did on my first letter of recommendation or my first personal statement was, it was very mechanical. It was the traditional personal statement, Air Force type, like, yeah, I've done X, Y, and Z, and this is why I think I should be a good fit for the program and yada, yada, yada. That's not what we want to see, because if you tell me, or if you tell us everything that's already in your EPRs, what is the point of the personal statement? I can just read that in your EPR. I know what awards you won. If you weren't winning awards like that, you probably wouldn't apply for the program, or or felt that you had what it took to apply for the program. Tell us what we don't know, right? Give us some of those soft skills, right? You really have to find your voice and speak from the heart in regards to why you want to do a program like this. And I think that was the most valuable information that I could have got when I applied the second time.
Yeah, and just a plug on that as well. So with that personal narrative statement, obviously keep it concise, but also that's your time to shine, right? Everything else is going to be standard what all the other applicants are submitting. So, I mean, you really got to differentiate yourself with that personal statement. And I'll be honest with you guys, like for me, I had a lot of hesitation to apply. If you look at my background, I'm considered, probably inexperienced compared to most of my peers because I haven't been in as long, right? I'm a fast burner. So this was an opportunity for me to actually get out there outside my comfort zone and show that, regardless of what my, experiences have been, I still have value and bring something. So I actually spelled that out in my narrative and said, take a chance, right? Here's what I bring to the table. Here's what I identify as my weaknesses. But, at the end of the day, here's my work ethic. Here's what I can do. And here's my passion for why I want to do this program and take it into the future. And I think that really helped set me apart as far as other applicants, right? So definitely, shine, right? Be honest about yourself. Be vulnerable, share your weaknesses, and then just show how you're overcoming them. Because at the end of the day, you're going to come to this program and you're going to be, hit with a whole bunch of different things. It's be like, man, was I really prepared for this? I'll be honest, I wasn't, but I'm learning every day and, surviving. And at some point I'll start thriving. And, that's part of the development portion.
Hey, can we speak on, and I kind of a key question, but then also for the panelists, because I like to be candid in our feedback. How flexible are we on with PCS eligibilities as it comes to this program? Because it seems very significant, but like we already had one question from the page that was like, what if I have a DROS and coming from an overseas location? Am I able to apply for the position? So to give, I know what the answer is. Hey, we can try, but I do kind of want to ask Key, like on the personnel side, are we tied with some restrictions? And then on you all side, what have you all seen since you've been in the seat as far as like PCS eligibility?
So I was in that boat, right? So I was in Korea at the time. So I had a DROS. Luckily, my D-Rose had to be curtailed about 2 months for me to end up taking the program. But honestly, if you're the person, right, if you would submit your package and you're just that guy or girl, what it's going to come down to is your CFM and your MFM making that decision on whether they're going to allow you to release. Because what happens, right? They're going to end up with a vacancy. Let's say you're in Korea, like I was, right, and we're curtailing your assignment for 8 months. Well, to us, we're okay with that, right? But it's up to your losing commander, your MFM, and your CFM to whether they feel if they're going to be able to fill that vacancy, or that losing commander is going to be like, all right, I can deal with the vacancy for the next 8 months until that rotation catches up with itself, right? So the D-Rose requirement, I wouldn't let that be a deterrent, but you should start having those conversations if you plan on submitting. Have those conversations with your MFM, have those conversations with your commander, and try to figure it out. And normally what I've seen, if your commander's good with it, if your MFM's good with it, your CFM will normally fall in line.
So Chief is right. Just a couple of things. Money. Every situation is definitely different. But when it comes down to unique programs like this, almost everything is waivable. And I say almost just because, again, every person's situation is different. But when we're talking about curtailing D-Roses, depending on those AFSCs, like we have a lot of intel folks up here, if they are that guy or that girl to do that job, the mission that they're in, those conversations will be had with the MAGCOM functional managers, the career functional managers, and then they'll talk to, on the AFPC side, the personnel, that policy side, to make sure, because we spend a little money. It's a little expensive to curtail some D-Roses, and you talk about families too. So it definitely is conversations do need to be had, because again, if they know up front, if your leadership knows up front your intentions, and if they have that support, as Chief stated, they can have those conversations to kind of hand massage that thing a little bit, and then to see if you are gonna your losing side is going to assume the risk of that gap. Some of them don't want to do that, so those conversations, but it's definitely waivable for sure.
Okay. And I'm glad somebody asked from the page, so I don't feel as bad of asking this question, because it's still along this same theme. Entering the program, was the time frame for selection. Is there like a general schedule of when you all rotate? Is it kind of sporadic? Is it kind of, so people should be planning for this. It seems like at least a year out. Hey, this is about this opportunity. So when would their time start? When would they see those Equal Plus ads start popping up and generating?
No, that's a great question, right? So, and everything is scripted here. So what'll happen is the ad will drop in AMS around the end of September, beginning of October. Packages are due at the end of November, right? And what's going to happen when you submit your package, we're not even going to start looking at them until chief results drop. And there's a reason for that, right? Because once chief results drop, everybody that made chief, that package is going to get removed from our review, right? Because then we lose control over you. Right now, don't get me wrong, if you make chief while you're in the program, you can stay. But if you make it during the application process, we got to kick you back to your AFSC. So packages are due at the end of November. We start reviewing packages after chief results in December. You probably find out if you got selected at the end of January, the beginning of February. What'll happen is once you find out if you made it or not, you'll PCS in June. You'll come up here to DC in June, and you'll start your professional development program in July of that following calendar year. And that's what I was talking about before, how there's always 3 classes on deck, right? So as soon as you PCS in that 3rd class that had came off the hill and finished their payback tour, they're PCSing out, and we're moving a new class in to make room for you guys. And that's why I was saying, like, so Lucy is a program manager, right? But I've been selected as the SEL. But I've been, out of my class, I was selected as the new SEL to backfill her. So I'll go to the Pentagon in January. We'll do some quick changeover. And then Lucy's PCSing in May. And then when she PCSs, I'll take over for her as the next SEL. And then we'll complete this cycle over and over again. So when this next class that's in professional development, like in Rob's class, we'll have to pick somebody out of that class who will backfill me as the SEL.
So packages are due here in a few weeks. It's as if we timed it for all those that are interested from the page. So this is your opportunity to ask questions. And if you want to get that package in on time, make sure you're getting it in.
Hey guys, I hate to do this.
Go ahead, sir. Sorry about that.
Oh no, I apologize. I just wanted to add a quick Space Force plug because we are doing things slightly different from the Air Force.
Yes.
We are not going through the AMS process. All right, the career field manager is controlling what our Space Force applicants. So here's the process for us: is on Talent Marketplace, My Vector. You need to go in there, and when you're getting ready for your DT boards, your development training boards, you need to put in there that you're interested in becoming a liaison somewhere in that package. That's what they're looking for. That's how they're going to guide you towards that goal. So don't be looking on the AMS. They're not accepting the AMS applications, but go ahead and start writing it in, put it into your timeline that this is something you want to do.
They definitely should see a plug on there on AMS that if they are Space Force, it does seem like that the Space Force side of the house is still being, small and growing. That information does get to you all better than it does.
I just want to highlight his plug for Talent Marketplace. I know we think we don't utilize it, but it was definitely the plug, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hey, and just one last thing too.
Go ahead,
I don't
Rob.
mean to cut you off, Key.
No,
Master Sergeants are eligible to apply this year. So we're Master Sergeants and seniors, right? And we could talk about why that decision was made later. But just so everybody's tracking, and I can't stress this enough, any AFSC, just because you're not Intel, just because you're not one of these AFSCs that are commonly associated with the program, don't cut yourself short. Apply, put your name in the hat, and take your chances and see. Like if you're really the right person at the right time, you'll get picked up. If it's not the first time to get picked up, then try it the second time. There is a common theme where some people do get picked up the second time around because it shows, consistency, and they actually have a passion for the program. So, just keep with it.
The only thing I wanted to plug in there was there's an AFI for this program. And so this AFI definitely it outlines all three of those different levels that the chief was referencing. I'm not using the verbiage correctly, but it's, I make sure that we put this out there with our live stream that is AFI 36-2658. And if you go on Air University, which I actually did when I saw the first picture of you all, there is a section up there that really breaks down a lot of these questions that are being asked about deroses, curtailments, testing for promotion. And this is one of those, it comes around, seems like it comes around the same time every year. So when you all do hire, so a lot of that is already in the references. The information is out there. That's my little shameless plug. Okay, so there was a question that was actually from the page I wanted to. So Tony, so shout out to Tony. She is on our admin team, so she is definitely very, very interested, which I'm very surprised she is not up here, but I'm not going to give her that much of a hard time. So one of the questions that she asked was, she was told that the bachelor's degree had to be conferred by the program start date if you are still enrolled during the application process. Can any of you all answer that question? So I put it up on the screen so that you all can see it.
Yeah, so what we're worried about is you have to have a conferred bachelor's degree by the time you start by the time the application is due, right? So if the application is due by November 30th, if you have a conferred bachelor's degree by that time, then we're good. Then we're good to go.
Okay. I think the only other follow-up question was about the Guard and Reservists. So for them, I know the process is a little bit different. Is anybody on this panel, you all Guard and Reservists, everybody active? And then do you all have a POC that we can kind of like refer them to for some of those questions on the Guard side, it looks like?
Yeah. Go ahead, Chief.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. You got it.
So Ava Pia, she is the current reserve member. There's a little interplay between how they do reserve and guard. I think they alternate between the years because they get picked up every 2 years. So we'll make sure that you guys have contact information for her. She's watching right now, but we'll make sure that she's available to chat. She's already on board, so she's ready to go.
Okay. The last thing is from McCoy, also from the admin team, saying that Rob's setup is a whole lot better than Black's setup.
Y'all, like, we have legitimate questions here, and here you go. All right. So my question to all the panel members, right, is obviously you guys had some mentors in your career in order to get you to this point. But I wanted to kind of ask the question: what does your mentors look like once you've been selected to the fellows? Do you find yourself reaching back to mentors from your AFSC, or do you reach out to personnel that have done the program before or ones that are currently in the program?
Who's going first?
All right, yeah. So I'll take it. So if we're being honest, right? So I take mentorship seriously. And a lot of the mentors that I've had are the same mentors that I've had for the last 15 years. And the reason why I believe that, why I do it that way, or I have done it that way, is that, that relationship between mentor and mentee is founded on trust, right? And to build that trust in order for me to talk to my mentor about some intimate details takes a long time, and I got trust issues. So if I trust somebody, then I'm gonna ride with you for the long haul. So a lot of my mentors have always been kind of 1 to 2 steps ahead of me. So as they transition into their next role, I kind of transition with them into my next role, which is something that they've already done. So right now, a lot of my mentors are retired chiefs and officers from not only Air Force, but from other services as well as warrant officers, right? Because I know as soon as I get to that level of whatever transition they're at now, they would have already moved on and had something to guide. They will be able to guide me in my transition through that next step, like retirement or whatever, right? Now, coaches, on the other hand, that's something different. And I think coaches for those short-term goals is something that I'll always have going. So if I need to learn something about a specific job, that I consider that a coach. And I have a lot of those. So to answer your question, some of the coaches that I have are previous fellows. I'll also look for coaches that are in positions that I'm trying to go towards, right? So, a lot of chiefs in certain positions, maybe a command chief here and there, somebody that can guide me along the way. But yeah, so I do have a lot of mentors that look like previous fellows and that are in positions that I'm trying to achieve in the future.
No doubt. If either one of you all have that as well, so I do want to kind of do you all have that same kind of deviance as far as like mentors versus coaches? Because that's one of the first times that we heard it explained that way. So I like to dive into that a little bit and say, hey, what does you all's scope look like? And then Rob, if you want to hit that one for me first.
Yeah, so no, I definitely have the distinguishing between the two, but I'll take a different spin real quick if you don't mind. So I'm actually a big fan of peer-to-peer mentoring, and right now my network is the current enlisted cohort that's with me, and I've been going through some different things in my life, and then as well as adapting to coming back from a deployment, immediately PCSing without my family and stuff. They have been pivotal to my success here. So when you come to the program, you might seem like, oh man, I got to find my new network. I got to reach back to people that may not have, readily access to, but you definitely develop a family relation with the enlisted fellows that come with you. So I rely on them. They have been mentoring me the whole way. So I definitely appreciate them. Just want to give them a shout out.
No doubt. And then Joshua, if I can expand out a little bit. So then as they talk about the mentors and stuff, can you run me through like a day in the life of what you have going on? It is I know we talked about the selection process, we talked about the mentors and everything. So now you get to talk to all these people. But what does a day in the life look for you?
Well, first of all, I'm just going to kind of highlight Tony's quotations around typical, because that's a day in a life. There is no typical. It is atypical. I will tell you that it's a constant battle. Time management is a constant battle. One of the biggest things that you have to kind of learn when you become a fellow is what's most important to you may not be most important to your office, may not be most important to your senator. You may want to go in and change the world, and he only wants to change one thing in his state. And you have to be prepared for that. You have to swallow your pride a little bit too sometimes. So when we're talking about a typical day, we're talking about meetings. We're staff meetings every Monday. For us, I'm working the Senate. Jamal works in the House. I don't go over there. It's a little bit dirty and dingy, so I try to stay away from that side of the Congress. But no, over in the Senate, I mean, we have our meetings on Monday, and then we have hearings every Tuesday and Thursday. And part of my job is to prep the communication for the senator before he goes into these hearings, these confirmation hearings. When the big thing about Afghanistan, the questions that he's going to ask, those are questions that our office is designing for him to ask. So that's some of the kind of typical stuff that we do week to week. The other thing is you're going to be dealing with constituents. So I'm in the Senate office for North Dakota. We have people calling all the time about, hey, I need help with this, I need help with that. And we listen to every single call. We respond to every single call. If you don't think your senator or your representative is listening to you, give it a little bit. At least in our case, in my office's case, we respond to everything. So that's close to about 2,600, 2,700 calls a week. So we are doing a lot of digging on information. So a typical week is not typical, but I will tell you that it's definitely a rewarding experience, and I wouldn't have traded this for anything.
No doubt, no doubt. Hey, Rob, when you answered, could you give me a little piece, because he mentioned one thing about being a fellow for North Dakota. So is this typical day also included with like a lot of travel, or how often would a person be looking to go TDY or traveling, with your answer as far as like your typical day?
So for me, was that for me? Is that for Griff?
Oh, that's for you, Rob.
Oh, okay, so I'm actually in the developmental rotation right now. I'm not on the Hill. I'm the class before the current one.
Okay.
So just give you guys some perspective on that. A day in the life for us, it's every fellow's experience is unique in their own. What organization they support, what their tempo is and stuff. So for me, I work at CISA, so the Cyber Security and Infrastructure Security Agency, and I work in the International Affairs Department as an advisor, so as a DoD advisor. But my day-to-day is pretty much teleworking. I usually have some days where I go into the office for staffing. So today I got to staff with the director of CISA for a meeting that she had with international partners. But my portfolio for the program at CISA has been, from day one that I was onboarded to now, has been, handling different projects that are now coming to fruition as I'm finishing up my time at the program. But other fellows, depending where they go, they could be jobbing it day to day, or they could have a little bit more downtime. And I think that's one thing also that people who apply should understand, is when you come into the program, there's going to be a significant amount of downtime to where typically the people who apply for these type of jobs, they're, pushing 100% of the time. They're not really familiar with the downtime. They're always jobbing it, looking for the next opportunity. So that's something that I really had to throttle back on and just understand, like, hey, this is my time to get my thoughts right, to get my wellness good, right? So when it does come time to get on the Hill, that I'm ready to go. But be prepared for some downtime as well.
So if I could, I do want to touch on something that Griff said, and then I'll touch on the question you had, Jay Will, right? And I think this is important for everybody to understand, is what your role is as a defense fellow in that office, right? So you're the senior military advisor to that member of Congress, whether they're on the House of Representatives or the Senate, in regards to what the executive branch is doing and why they're doing certain things. So it's important that we stay up to date on certain things, like on all those guiding documents, like the NDS, the MSS, the NSS, like General Brown's accelerator or lose order, like those things that those are the things that we have to keep up on, right? So like Griff was saying, what our responsibility is, normally when we assign a fellow to a member, it's normally a member that's on a committee that's going to affect the executive branch. So whether that's the Armed Services Committee, whether that's in the House of the Senate, the Appropriations Committee, either in the House of the Senate, Foreign Affairs, or something along those lines, right? So me, I'm a little different. I was the offshoot. I'm assigned to a member that has no affiliation with the executive branch. He has no equities in his district. But at the same time, so regardless of that, one thing that we have to consider, like Griff was saying, is that the constituency. So let's say you're advising the member on something let's take an NDAA amendment, right? Because that's what the Armed Service Committees do. They are authorizers. They route the NDAA amendments. So we not only have to take into consideration the executive branch's objectives and goals, but we also have to take into consideration that member's state or district objective or goals, right? Because yes, this member is there to make sure that we put together the best product, the best NDAA, but he or she has got to answer to his constituency. So if the military is trying to BRAC, or there's a base on a BRAC list, right? But that base provides 2,000 jobs in that district or that state, well, that member is probably not going to vote for that amendment. So we have to take those considerations as they come. Like Griff was saying, some of those things that the executive branch wants are things that we think are good for the whole might not be what our member says, right? But we just gotta salute smartly and keep rolling, just like the NCO Corps knows how to do. Now, in regards to the travel piece, right? So every fellow, when they're in the program, is authorized one trip to either the state or the district that they're members from, just so we get an understanding of what that constituency wants. So, for instance, my member's out of Houston, so I went to Houston for a week just to see, at the time there was a conference going on, but I get the chance to talk to constituents and see what they're going on, see what their wants and needs are. So it helps us better advise the member on what they need to do or on things they need to be concerned about.
I appreciate that, Chief. So while we're on the topic of the congressman and your constituents and all that, so I think someone asked it on the page as well. Do any of the fellows get a say in as to which congressman or member of the Senate that you get selected with or get placed with?
No, you don't. We do not get a say in who we get assigned to. There is some certain criteria on how you get assigned. One of the things is you cannot be a constituent of that state because they don't want any type of undue influence or anything of that nature. So, I mean, I'm a resident of Florida, but I'm assigned to North Dakota. So doesn't mean the issues the issues will be different between state to state, but how you react to the issues will not be different. The other thing that happens is look at your background. So one of the reasons I'm assigned to North Dakota is because my senator is the chair of the Space Force Committee. So there you go. Now I can give them a little bit of space background and something along those lines. So it could be, for instance, let's see, I think one of our EOD guys is assigned to Arkansas. Well, that's just one of the reasons was because the person there, the senator, his father was a enlisted guy, master sergeant. So he always wants an enlisted fellow in his office. So we don't get any say, but we are placed based off of our backgrounds and what the senator is looking for to try to advance whatever policy it is within their state. And don't think that just because they want somebody, they're going to get someone. That doesn't happen either. There's a lot of senators and representatives who don't get a fellow at all. And that's where that process comes down to Jamal's job next year for the Air Force and my job for the Space Force in looking at we're assigning the right people to the right states to get the biggest bang for our buck across the entire DoD.
Thank you for that clarification, sir. I appreciate it.
All right, so we just want to put this plug out there again. So someone is giving us kudos, right? But we can't see who it is because they have not enabled StreamYard. It just says Facebook user. However, my wingman Coy, also on the admin team, he should be pinning on the Facebook side how you all can just enable it so we then can see your faces and know who we're addressing. So thank you, Facebook user, for this shout out. Back over to you, Jay Will.
Hey, yeah. So I'm getting a good idea day to days. I'm getting a good idea of what you all are doing and what y'all are charged of, even at the schoolhouse level. So I do got to kind of direct this one to Chief, because as I'm hearing the information come across, as I am really starting to grasp like what you all are doing, it only makes me think like, what do you do next after you're literally enabling policy and law and working with congressmen, going on these trips, and we can use a lot more acronyms to go in there. But what is next for you? So if you can kind of touch that one first, Jamal, and then as well, I want to get a Space Force answer on that one.
No, that's a good question, right? And to be honest, we're still trying to figure that out. We're trying to streamline what is the best fit, what makes sense in order to, where do we send somebody who goes from advising a member of Congress to X, right? But in that vein, right? So Lucy is she's in talks with the CFMs, with the MATCOM functional managers, and we want them to have a vested interest in the program, meaning that there should be some deliberate talent development. I'll tell you what has happened in the past, and then what we're going towards to make it easier, right? So normally this program was only open to senior master sergeants and senior master sergeant selects. And just the trend, right? And I'm not saying this is a guarantee, right? But just the trend is that normally people get promoted once they're in the job. So when they're exiting the program, they're a chief. So where do you send a chief with this experience? What has happened in the past is that they've sent the majority of the chiefs to group chief jobs if they either didn't retire or go to some type of school afterwards, right? So we've had one chief, he went to Air War College, and then after that, he got picked up on the command chief list. But the majority of the chiefs that come in the program normally leave and they go to group chief jobs. And that, I'm not saying that that's what we're asking for. That's what the plan is, right? That is what happened in the past. What we want, or what we're looking at, is to get MAJCOM functional managers and career field managers on board, so we have an understanding, like, okay, well, what are the knowledge, skills, and abilities that you are looking for at certain jobs? And then what we've done is we've developed our own knowledge, skills, and abilities. Like, hey, look, this is what the program provides. And in the future, when it comes down to the application process, what we're doing now is that we're accepting anybody that wants to submit a package on AMS. Our goal is for the MAJCOM functional managers to handle a lot of the vetting initially, and then each MAJCOM submits 2 people. And then those MAJCOM commanders will submit 2, so we'll end up with 24 packages to look at instead of 60. And then now that MAJCOM manager is like, okay, well, I'm going to send you up to the DC. I'm going to send you up to DC to get this experience. And then when you come out, I got a job for you. This is what I want you to do. I'm gonna line you up with this unit or this squadron, this group, whatever. I'm gonna bring you back to the MAJCOM staff with me, or something along those lines. That's where our goal is, right? We need more of deliberate actions in regards to what's happening. But that's what happened now. So in my opinion, and this is just us talking, right? So I don't think it necessarily makes sense for, somebody to go from here advising a member of Congress to necessarily going back to a unit to advising a unit commander. I think you would go back with a gang of knowledge to talk about, like you would. I just think the level of knowledge.
No, and that's why I asked the question. And I also want to ask, so is there conversations, and this one's directed towards you, is to be like, so even on the MFM side, so when somebody is selected to be an MFM, they traditionally go to the smallest MAJCOM, but then they graduate, and then they go to a larger MAJCOM, a larger population, more responsibility, et cetera. So is there conversations in the fellowship program to where, because like you said, there's only so many fellows, so you can't be handling all of the interaction. So is there conversations to develop, so like as you continue on or expand out your time to where you can be placed with a senator with maybe a higher population than what you were originally, or more situations that have to be in, you know what I mean? We can go across we go to first sergeants when they're initially placed in positions, they're normally given to a smaller unit. And then as they grow and progress, and then they get, they go up and up. So that's kind of how I see the fellowship. But is there any of those conversations, or is it kind of like, hey, you have to do your 4 and then transition on?
No, and here's why, right? Like, I don't see us extending the program, and because like you were saying, right, you need that continued development. So no matter what, whether you're in the House of Representatives or on the Senate side, right? So let's take the House of Representatives, for instance, right? Because when you're with a member in the House, you support a district, so a district within a state. But for a district to earn a congressional seat, you need 700,000 people. So even though you might have the smallest district out there, but that's still a lot of people, right? So there's, no matter what office you're in, everybody's going to have generally the same experience in regards to what you're doing, and the same level of education that you get by the time you leave here. So I don't think that's necessarily the case. Now, on the flip side of that, when you leave the program and then there's that development, because the program is relatively new to enlisted personnel, and a lot of people don't necessarily know what the program entails, and that's why we do things like this. So there's a lot of master sergeants out there, and seniors and chiefs at all different levels that are just like, well, okay, so you went to DC, and now what? What did you learn, right? What skills do you have? So that's why this education piece is happening. And I say that because so now they still want to see that traditional Air Force level of development, whether it's squadron, group, wing, or small MAJCOM to a larger MAJCOM, and so on and so forth. So that's why we're in talks with the MAJCOM functionals and the CFMs to get everybody on board to understand, like, all right, well, look, by the time we have a fellow that exits this program, he or she is going to be able to do X, Y, and Z, and they're going to have an understanding of A, B, and C, right? So now you have the opportunity, like, okay, well, look, I know I sent you up there to get this level of knowledge and this experience, and I got the perfect place for you when you come out. So eventually we'll all have an SEI code when we leave here. And I think it won't be as important at the chief level because the assignments run a little differently, but now that we're accepting master sergeants and more senior master sergeant selects, they'll have a lot more time, they'll have a lot more legs under them within their career, and they'll have more room to grow. So they're going to go back into a situation where their assignments are governed by AFPC. So to avoid having them get lost in the sauce, we want to get our MFMs involved in our CFM. So like, hey, look, we just had this master sergeant or this senior select, most likely, who's coming out of this program with this experience. We need to put them on this MAGCOM staff to advise a 2-letter whatever, right? Or we need to put them at the group level to advise, the group chief or the group commander on X, Y, and Z, right? So we're still working out those nuances, but that's what we're trying to get to.
That doesn't sound too far-fetched. It sounds like a return of investment. So if you guys, frame it the right way, that's the lingo that we hear in the A1 community. So that's the return on investment. But I wanted to get to a question that was on the Facebook side from Carrie CC Thomas. So her question to you all is, what is the overall culture of the fellowship team, specifically since each fellow can be placed in different offices?
It's a brotherhood. I mean, sisterhood, whatever you want to call it. I mean,
we
have 26. Hey, I got you.
Hell yeah, you was about to get it. I'm just letting you know.
Let them know representation.
I saw the look. So, I mean, we have 26 fellows on the Hill. There's only 5 enlisted. So if you don't get much more tight knit than this is, and I'll tell you, rank doesn't matter when you're on the Hill. They don't know you're a master sergeant, senior master sergeant, major, colonel, unless you provide that information. What they do know is you're Air Force. That's what they care about. They are looking to you for military advice from an Air Force, not from your rank. So don't get too bent around the wheels or the axles or however you want to say it about the differences in rank. And I will tell you, as a fellow, you are a fellow. We do not call each other by their rank very often. It's just one of those things. It's first name basis. Sometimes it's first name basis with staff members. Sometimes it's first name basis with senators, which gets a little weird, by the way. But it is definitely a fellowship. That's what this is all about. I mean, really, you don't have to worry about any of those dividing barriers. They're all knocked down. And we go out, we hang out together now that COVID is a little less strict. We have parties together. We do get-togethers while we're on the Hill. Yeah, you don't have to worry about any of that.
So I take it, since you're not calling each other by your rank a lot, you guys aren't wearing the uniform a lot, correct?
No, absolutely not. Right. So I haven't worn a uniform in a long time. Right. Actually, the first time I wear my uniform in about a year and a half will be tomorrow because I'm in a retirement ceremony. And that's only because I love this dude like a play cousin. Right. But like Griff was saying, like on the enlisted side of the house since 2012, there's been about 21 fellows. Right. So we are very tight knit by class as well as just by the effect that we've been a fellow before. So we do reach out to previous fellows just to ask their opinion, or just, they're always asking like, hey, what's going on? You guys need anything? How's everything going up on the Hill? So we're a very tight community. So I would say the culture is fantastic. I've seen some great teams before, and I've been on some great teams, and this is definitely top five.
Hey, to not disclude the Space Force, if we can go back 1 second, do you have any insight? I know you're not wrapping up on your tenure, but do you have any insight on the Space Force side? What would be next on that scope for you? Are you all looking at kind of the same things? Is it pretty much the same answer, or can you kind of elaborate in that one?
Hey, don't reinvent the wheel, right? This is the first time that we've had Space Force fellows, me being the first. We have one other following behind me, Senior Master Sergeant Brian Sheffield. Big brain on that guy. He's going to do some fantastic things too. And Jamal and I are going to work together. We're going to see where some of the weaknesses are in the fellowship program and where the strengths are. And we're going to get a vision together about what this is going to look like. Right now, with the Space Force, what's going to happen with me when I get back is I'm going back to the Pentagon, and I'll get set up into a developmental tour again as well. I'm going to be working in SAF Legislative Liaison Weapons space side. So I'll be fielding questions from all branches about space, about launches, about satellites. So that's what's going to be happening with me. And I'm also going to be managing Chief Master Sergeant of the Space Force Toberman's portfolio, preparing him for those congressional engagements. But it is not a one-man show. You can believe that Jamal and I are going to be working very close. And I don't envision the program to look drastically different, but we are going to make it stronger.
I appreciate that. So I want to continue the trend, but also redirect a little bit and I want to get first from the school side, from Rob. Give me the biggest challenge you've had so far in the program, and the biggest hurdle you had to overcome. And then as he answers, if Jamal and Joshua, if y'all can think about, as you, because both of you all at different positions as well, can you think about the biggest challenge that you all have had in your tenure being in the positions?
Yeah, so far, just being in the development rotation, I say the biggest challenge right now is just getting out of the DoD mindset, and specifically like the barriers that rank brings to the table. So at CISA, when I first joined the team and onboarded, I came in there and the team thought I was something that I wasn't. Like, they didn't even know that I was enlisted. They didn't understand the difference between officer and enlisted, but they thought I was, like a high level individual coming from the DoD to support them. I was like, listen, like, compared to you guys, I'm like a GS9 over here, right? So just being able to understand that my rank wasn't a barrier working with civilian counterparts in these civilian agencies was the biggest challenge. Just trying to get comfortable with that and really not overstepping my bounds, because at the end of the day, I do represent the DoD and I have to come back to it. Same thing, like once you go to the Hill, you got to come back. You can't go native and think you're going to stay there forever. But beyond that, I mean, every day is a challenge, honestly. Just the different things that you're exposed to, you might not be the expert on it. You might not have any visibility on it, or that's the first time you're seeing it that day at that time. And just being able to adapt and understand that, hey, you're not going to know everything right off the bat, but know what your resources are, reach out to people that do have the answer, and then just know that you're not alone. So.
Joshua, can you hit the next piece on that? So as we get to Jamal.
Going back, you want to know like what kind of challenges?
Yeah. So far, like what's your biggest? What has been your biggest challenge being in the program thus far?
Two biggest challenges is realizing that your words matter. What you say, how you represent, what you write, because there will be times where in the meeting, the senator, he will read what you wrote word for word. So getting the vernacular straight is very important. The other thing is that you are a direct representation of the service. You are a direct representation of the Air Force. And once again, that goes back to making sure that those words matter, how you act, how you react. It matters a lot when you're in those offices, because people are looking at you, and you're not just Joshua Griffin, you're not just Senior Master Sergeant, you're Space Force or Air Force. That's what they see. So you really have to be careful there. The other thing is finding that dividing line. The final dividing line is that you have to be apolitical in these offices. There's no left side, right side, no matter what office you're working in. Big brother or big daddy Air Force is always going to be there when you get back, and they're going to be paying attention to you. So those are some of the biggest challenges you may face.
No doubt. What you got for us, Jamal?
Yeah, so I went through a couple of challenges, and they were a little different. Like, when I was in my professional time, one of my biggest challenges was like, man, what am I supposed to do with all this extra time I got, this freedom? And that what I did was, it gave me a lot of time to self-reflect, and I realized how much self-reflection I was not doing while throughout my career, because I was always on the go. I was always trying to reach my next milestone. So I didn't do a lot of self-reflection. So that was one of the big challenges. But when I got on the Hill, a lot of the challenges that I faced were the same things that these guys have mentioned, right? So one is that you have to be very cautious and deliberate with what you say, because what you say is a representation of the Department of Defense. Like if you say one thing, so you have to be cautious on how you respond to certain things. So you have to really think before you react. And another thing Griff said was, you have to be apolitical. When I had my first meeting with my congressman, he asked the question. He was like, "Hey, look," and I know he was trying to fill me out, but he basically said, "What happens when your ideology differs from your member?" And I sat and I thought about it, and I was like, "Hey, you know what, sir? We have to suck that shit up." And those are my exact words. And this is why, right? Because we work for the executive branch of government. I'm here to support you, your congressional district, and the state of Texas in any way I can. And if that involves me taking out the trash, or that means me making copies or whatever, or advising you on military matters, that's what I'm here to do. But it doesn't matter whether I'm a Republican or a Democrat or an independent, it doesn't, I'm here to support you. Now, where things get a little tricky is that you do have certain ideals, you do have certain biases when you go into certain situations, especially a wedge issue, whether that's immigration or healthcare or whatever it may be. When you write, like Griff was saying, when you write these questions, when you make it recommendations to the member on ways that they should vote, whether it's a yes or a no, you have to write in a language that they would say. So if you're a Democrat and you work for a Republican, you have to write in the vernacular, in the language of a Republican. And vice versa. If you're a Republican, you have to write in that vernacular. So you have to have an understanding of what the other side is thinking and their mindset. But however, what that does do is it gives you an opportunity to see some ground truth. So when we think of Republican or Democrat, a lot of times we go off of what Fox News and what CNN are telling us. What we then get to see is that, like, okay, well, there's some ground truth to some of the beefs that they have, and some are legitimate, and some are not. But you have to take those legitimate beefs and stick to the facts. And if you have a certain topic that you're discussing, you have to write based on those facts. And you have to kind of put aside any biases that you might have on a particular subject.
Wow. Thank you for that, Chief. That was deep, and that was a really, really great answer to maybe a question a lot of folks were thinking in the background, because I know personally I was thinking of that as well in the background. Like, how do you navigate that kind of narrow field? So great job answering that question. So as we get ready to wrap it up, because we've kind of been holding you guys up now for a little over an hour, we want to prepare our last wrap-up question. So you guys are kind of at different stages of your fellowship or your fellowship term. So the last wrap-up question I'm going to ask you all, and I'll go with Rob first to be the first one to answer, is what is one thing you wish you knew before you got selected as a fellow? Rob, you're on the hot seat.
Yeah, so for me, just coming from the Intel background, I always got to do my research before I get into a situation or I start working, right? So the biggest thing I would have liked to know, or even now would like to know, is like, who am I really going to go work for when the selections come down? Like, what office am I going to? What representative or congressman or congresswoman am I going to be supporting? That way, I could have enough time to really like start tracking that particular individual and getting to understand, like how they like to operate, what topics are specific to them, what do they care about, what don't they care about. But yeah, right now we just kind of, play it as we go. And then you get that information when you get that information.
Thank you, sir. So Griff, will transition to you next for your response.
Oh, this one's easy. So what I wish I would have known was understood better from like a strategic level, right? Growing up as a supervisor, as an operations senior enlisted leader, you get kind of wrapped around the operations and the tactical side. When you get to the strategic level, it's realizing that everything that happens is completely interconnected, and you really have to look at a problem or solution from multiple angles to make sure that you're making the right choices. So that was one of the areas that I really struggled with at first, because we're senior NCOs. We'd like to just get the job done and move on to the next task. But you getting that job done may have created 4, 5, 6 different problems here 2 to 3 months down the road, or years down the road. and it's us to be the custodians of our future and to make sure that we're not making poor choices.
Thank you, sir. And lastly, Chief, what is one thing you wish you knew before getting selected as a fellow?
Yeah, so I don't want to, and I hate to leave this as the last thing that you guys hear from me, right? And this is definitely not a dig on a program, but one thing that I wish I had known or thought through were the second and third order effects of coming into a program with a 3-year control tour, essentially, right? Is that so? Like I said before, if you make chief or if you get promoted, regardless, normally in your career field, they tend to do some leveling. So when you get promoted, that normally comes with a PCS. Well, when you're in the program, if you get promoted, you are staying, right? So you are going to give that time back to this legislative affairs program. And what the second order effect that could have is that when your peers are continuing on in their leadership journey, let's take chief, for instance, right? So if you make chief, normally if you're at a base, you would PCS and you would go into like maybe a squadron superintendent position and continue on, on that path. So by the time you leave here, especially if you make chief on your first go round, meaning the first time the first year you're actually in the program, you could essentially be 2 years behind your peers by the time you leave here. Now and like I said, this is not a dig on a program, but this is why we're also talking with the CFMs and the MFMs to make sure that, look, you have this understanding, because if there's that traditional thought level of thought or traditional thinking where, all right, you a chief, you need squadron time first before you go on and do anything else. Well, by the time I'm able to do a squadron, my peers are already they're getting ready. If potentially they're in their second year of their group job. So that could be a second and third order effect. However, like I said, it's not a dig, and I would do everything about what I've done so far again and again and again, right? Even knowing that I have this, control tour, and that, look, if I make chief and I can't PCS, I would do it over and over just because of the experience that I'm gaining here. So yeah, that's one thing that I wish I had known.
Wow. Thank you for that, Chief. Thank you for being vulnerable in that moment, because a lot of people would have tried to keep that to themselves. So thank you for sharing, allowing the members of the platform, the page, to kind of see you sharing your inner thoughts. So again, before we wrap it up, I want to allow the panel members some final thoughts, but please include in your final thoughts how members from the page can reach you if they have any questions or more questions about the program. So I'll turn it over to you, Rob, since you went first last go around. So you can wrap it up, sir.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate you guys hosting this panel and giving us the opportunity to speak. We're all really down to earth as far as the enlisted side goes. So, I mean, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I know that's what I did when I was getting ready to submit my application. I reached out to previous fellows and fellows who were currently on the Hill, and it really helped me understand what I was getting into from their perspective and what they experienced. So don't hesitate. You can reach me at roberto.montano, that's MONTANO @us.af.mil, or you can find me on LinkedIn or Facebook.
Thank you, sir. Griff.
Griff, nice. I didn't even have to put that up there. So, guys, really thank you for this opportunity. This was some exciting stuff. I hope we answered some great questions for you guys. And absolutely, we're here to help. We're here to kind of guide you through. Air Force going through Jamal, Space Force, you can come back and ask me. And the best way to reach me is Facebook or at LinkedIn. And until I get my military emails set back up again, joshua.griffin2@yahoo.com. I'll answer your questions and I will get back to you.
We dubbed him the Griff. Do you see it?
2 F's, but that's cool.
He said,
yeah, and
right,
you're right. Just a reminder, right? So I really want to stress the fact that, look, team, there are not a lot of opportunities for enlisted members out there like this one, right? So I highly, even though the amount of people that we can select are low, if you have an interest, right, if you want to do some career broadening, I highly suggest that you apply now, especially before we get to a point where we could turn it over to MFMs and they do a lot of the vetting where they're only going to send us 2 people. Right now, anybody and everybody can apply as long as you meet those requirements. The things that I've learned here working in a totally civilian requirement were that, being in 20 years and this is most of my adult life. So there was that nervousness about me figuring out whether I could do something different when I took the uniform off, right? So there was that fear, like, man, can I really do something else, when I leave here? However, one thing that I understand now is that my military experience, as what coupled with my civilian education, has more than prepared me for life outside the military. And it's done the same thing for everybody out there, right? The military has gave you some significant skills. And if you've taken advantage of your TA, or if you went to school before you joined, you have everything you need to be very successful when you leave here. And that's one thing that I learned in working in the civilian environment. So please, if you have an interest, apply. You will be surprised what you will learn about yourself when you get outside of your own AFSC and you do something different. But if you need to hit me up, by all means, I will post my information on the uMu page under this chat to make it easier. That way you have my email address as well as my Facebook contact. And I'm myself, as well as the other fellows, are more than willing to talk to anybody and everybody about this program, because we feel that deeply about it, right? It's just been so good to us. We want to make sure that we pay it forward.
Appreciate that, Chief. Again, thank you all so much for your time. I'm sure there's a lot of people that learned so much from this. So from the uMu team, thank you for taking the time out to questions out. I was myself.
We can't hear you.
It will.
I don't know. I think it's I think it's what he's not gonna do is he's not gonna give me to not have an opportunity to do a closeout. That's what you're not.
Because you saw he was about to do that to us.
That's what I thought.
He need to just go to the bed.
Man, we can't hear you anyway.
It's just
we might as well
Rob's
remove you from the stream. So.
Right.
Nah, man, but seriously, so genuinely humbled and appreciative of you all's time, as I always like to say. But then also to the uMu team. So we've been getting a lot of comments as far as, hey, we haven't asked all the questions. There's absolutely no way that we can get through all the questions that you can ask. Our intent behind all of our panels is to get you to connect with the members and then gravitate to whoever fits you all. So with that being said, when we select individuals, we make sure to tell them, and I'm saying it in front of them, to make them reachable and accessible to you all. So even after this conversation, we want to ensure that you all have a resource that maybe you didn't have beforehand. Because be honest, even if we tried, we couldn't get through all of the questions that you can have. As you can see, there's so many different levels. There's so many different positions. There's so many different things that they do. And they all speak a different language per se. That can connect with different individuals. So that's for uMu. To my panel, as always, I'm always super humbled by you all taking y'all times out. We always do these at night, and then we always on like a random day, and just from you all disconnecting from family and taking this hour and a half plus, because we get on before then. So it really like a 2-hour commitment to do this for the page. I'm really appreciative of that. It's very genuine, and it's all love. So with that, Key, before Black steals your time,
right?
If you want to close out with anything as well.
Yes, no, I just want to echo what Jay Will said. We want to thank you all. We know that you all, time is something that we can never give back. So we definitely thank you guys so much. It definitely was just on a whim of us just paying attention to our group. And in the group messages, there were a lot of buzz and a lot of individuals who, one, didn't even know you all existed. And then two, wanted to be able to touch and have conversations and not just read the AFI. So we definitely thank you guys so much. We are going to post their information down on our page side, because again, we are streaming on multiple platforms. So we still want to protect the integrity of this group. And individuals, everybody in the military. So we just go make sure that we keep it kosher. So thank you all so much. Again, we definitely appreciate it. That's all I have, Black.
Thank you. All right. So again, lastly, for the page members out there, if there's something that you would like to see us do a little differently, do a little better, or if you have an idea for a panel, please reach out to us. You can see us with the little admin tabs by our names. We do this for you guys as well. And for my panelists, again, thank you all. For those that still have questions, the panel members are going to circle back and answer all the questions that you have within time. I'm not saying it's going to get answered tonight, but again, thank you all. And with that, until next time.
All right.
Did Jamal just leave?